Professionalism. Why is it important? Why even bothering to look at this topic? Well, you can be as technically competent as you want. But if you want to be truly successful, you need to have a professional and ethical reputation in addition to being technically competent. We bandy this word professionalism about quite often, but what does it actually mean? Well, it's one of those difficult ones to define, but it has to do with the way a person conducts themselves in the workplace. There's not a whole list of things that you can do and don't do. It goes beyond a checklist. If you have a look at this quotation there, gives you some of the ideas of what it means to be professional. So in the geoscience and also the engineering fields, as with many other international fields of practice, professionalism is based on 3 pillars: registration, continual professional development, and ethics and professional conduct. So let's start off by looking at registration. In South Africa, we have 2 different categories of registration: statutory and being a member of a professional body. First question we often ask is, well, why would I want to be registered? What's in it for me? Primarily, registration provides you with a certain level of formal international recognition of what you have done, of your knowledge and your experience. Now, in South Africa, registration with a professional body is becoming the norm, whether it be in science, whether it be in engineering or medicine or wherever. If you are registered, it tells your employers, your clients, and the public at large that you've got the required qualifications and the applicable practical experience to do the job that you say you do. So the idea is that it's going to give them confidence to hire you, knowing that you are what you say you are. We have so many instances of people applying for jobs and we find out that they don't have the qualifications that they say they do. Being registered mitigates that to a certain degree. In addition, as geologists, you're likely to be involved in the estimation of mineral reserves or resources on a mine at some stage down the line. And if you want to sign off as a competent person on a public document for a stock exchange, for example, you will need to be registered with one or other statutory or professional body. Note this, hear me fine. Laser pointer. Registration does not necessarily mean that you are competent or that you can do the job well. It just says that you have the necessary knowledge and skills to be able to do it. We'll come back to the relationship between or ideas about competence a little bit later. So if we start off with statutory registration, the SACNASP, or the South African Council for Natural Scientific Professions, this is the registering authority for the fields of practice that we typically fall under: geoscience, earth science, environmental science, water science, soil scientists. SACNASP, for better or for worse, the Department of Higher Science and Innovation. Currently, Minister Blade and Zamande. SACNASP is managed through the SACNASP Act of 2003, And the two sections of this Act that apply to us are Section 18 and Section 20. The intent of Section 18 was that all practicing scientists would need to register with SACNASP. However, when they wrote Section 20, they muddied all the waters by referring specifically to consultants needed to be registered. And this then became a loophole so that it mostly referred to consultants being needed to be registered. The new bill, the Natural Scientific Professions Bill, which they started writing back in 2019, and it might see the light of day next year or the year after, or even sometime after that. It's currently sitting with Parliament, and it will eventually become an act in due time and replace the current act. The things that are of importance to us there is that this new act provides for jurisdiction over all natural scientists who are practicing in the profession. So it doesn't only relate to consultants. Everybody who practices as a natural scientist will need to be registered. It even goes so far as to enable SACNASP to action against employers who employ unregistered scientists. So getting a job without being registered would be an issue once this thing sees the light of day. The other thing that needs to do is it requires that the levels of work and levels of competency be identified for everything that we do. And you wouldn't be able to practice specific things without being registered. Something else which is very different to the way things currently work is if you were the subject of a disciplinary proceeding through SACNASP, the board would be able to publish that to let people know whether you are being or not, which is very different to the way it happens now. So when we look at being registered with SACNASP, what are the benefits? Well, you need to be legally compliant. SACNASP is also a recognized professional organization for all stock exchange jurisdictions. So it allows you to be recognized internationally as a professional and sign off on public documents. SACNASP has an internationally benchmarked code of conduct. It has an operational online CPD system. You have access to the mentorship, the candidate mentorship program that SACNASP runs in conjunction with the GSSA. And you would also have access to cheaper professional indemnity assurance. There are a number of categories in which an individual can be registered with SACNASP. This is the one that we're all aiming for, the professional. And what is required there is a 4-year degree plus 3 years of experience. You can also get there through 10 years of work experience, and it requires ongoing CPD. This is where a number of you are sitting, looking at being a candidate, which is once you have graduated, but you don't have any work experience. And this will also require a certain level of CPD if you and when you want to transfer up to the PR SciNet category. That hasn't yet been formalized, so watch this space. We will let you know as and when more details are recovered. SACNASP also has a student enrollment initiative. So if you are in your final year at university, you can enroll at SACNAS for free. That gives you access to many of the benefits that are experienced by registered professionals. So the second variety of registration that we have in South Africa is the professional membership. And this is if you are a member of a voluntary association. And it says what it means. It's something that you can belong to. You don't have to. SACNAS, with statutory, you have to be registered with SACNAS. Being registered with a professional body is something that you do because you want to. And the Geological Society is one of these professional and also a scientific organization that you can belong to. And this provides you a home in South Africa, a professional home, to help you stay linked to your community. The GSSA is associated with SACNAS. It is also associated with many other local, regional, and international professional bodies. So to be able to be a normal member of the GSSA, you're looking at having or being enrolled in a geoscience degree. We look at each application on a case-by-case basis. Frame of reference is the Constitution, and we also have a ethics code benchmarked against international geoscience practice. This slide highlights some of the basic services that the GSSA provides to our members. Encourage you to have a look at these and to make yourself familiar with what they mean for you, because all of these opportunities are available to you as GSSA members. Code of ethics. We have a CPD program which is attached to all of our scientific meetings. Number of different branches and divisions that might appeal to you specifically. The REI fund is there for research activities, conference attendance, the Geobulletin and the newsletter, Journal of Geology. We're a recognized professional organization which allows you to sign off on public reports, mentorship opportunities, and relationships with other organizations. These are the membership categories that we have. As you can see, there's something for everyone here. The normal corporate membership, student membership, which is free, affiliate membership, if you don't have a geology or a geoscience degree, but you still are interested in geoscience, and institutional membership for organizations, companies, service providers. Just a note on the membership with chartered status. This is a category that we developed for members or fellows, corporate members who want to use their GSSA membership to sign off on public reports. Not particularly relevant if you are already registered with SACNAS, but you can if you wish. And not only for signing off on SAM codes or any other Crisco code, but if you want to act as a qualified expert who's going to sign off on a UNFC resource report under the new European Union regulations, it's useful for anybody who is not registered with SACNAS, such as academics, people who are employed by various state organizations, people who live and work outside of South Africa and who are not registered with SACNAS, but also want to sign off on public reports. This is the the membership category that you should be interested in. We have a question. Why is it that geoscientists do not have a legal appointment within the mining industry? This would ensure the employer is obligated to designate competent or registered personnel to carry out the task. Londwa, this is a question that we have been asking for a while. And it's just not part of our legislation to have a legal appointment for geoscience. The mine health and safety regulations make provision for legal appointments within the mining hierarchy, but not within geoscience, because geologists were never thought of as mine managers in days gone by. And because our legislation is only 100 years out of date, this hasn't yet come in. And I'm afraid I can't give you a really good answer to that question, except to say that you're not the first person to ask it, and we are trying to drive it as far as we can. Being part of, whether it be a statutory body or a professional body, it's not all about what it can do for you, but also how you as a professional geoscientist can give back, can contribute to the industry. And here I'm thinking especially in terms of providing mentorship to younger members or becoming role models. And I see we have a number of people online who are in the category of being able to provide mentorship and being role models for younger people. Right, we mentioned earlier that simply because you registered as a professional geoscientist with SECNASP or a member of a professional body doesn't necessarily make you competent. So what's the difference? Well, registration means that you academic qualifications that you say you have. You've got a physical degree. It also says that you have the work experience that you say you do, that you have worked for the number of years that you say you have, and that you've worked for a particular company, and that you actually have done so. So it means that you have sufficient practical and technical experience to be able to do the job. Competence, however, is the ability to actually do that job and do it with ever-increasing levels of proficiency. Competence is a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. It could be compared to an iceberg, where the bit that people see, our knowledge and our skills, really only makes up a small proportion of what makes us competent. By far the larger proportion is down to our attitudes. These are the personal standards, our ethics. And this is the bit that is reflected in our professionalism. Typically, these are the things that largely go unnoticed, except when they let us down. Then they come to the fore. So knowledge. Knowledge is based on qualifications. But unfortunately, it doesn't always mean that even if you have knowledge or have a degree, that you actually know what to do or that you can do it well. And once we've acquired some knowledge, you can't just stagnate. This quote here by Eric Hoffer: "In times of change, the learned inherit the earth. The learned find themselves beautifully prepared to deal with the world that no longer exists." we can never stop learning. We're going to very quickly become out of date. And we'll chat a bit further about that in the next section on CPD. So skills. This now refers to our ability to apply our knowledge to specific situations. You can't have skills without knowledge, but knowledge is typically about information that you have learned, whereas skills imply something practical. So it refers to something that we learn in order to be able to carry out our job functions. Now, simplistically, we can divide these into two categories. We have the hard skills, which refer to the technical knowledge or the trade through. Typically, these are occupational skills. These are the skills that you have learned in a classroom, and they might be some examples. Let's see, computer skills, what software programs you are familiar with, data analysis, database management, so forth. Soft skills, by contrast, these are non-technical skills that often don't relate directly to your job description as a geoscientist. They're general characteristics that would help you to thrive, including such things as communication skills, critical thinking, decision-making abilities, and a wide variety of management, business, and leadership skills. Unlike technical skills, which can be easily defined and measured, soft skills, these are often tangible and difficult to quantify, but at the same time can be more important even than the hard skills. And here I want to refer to a study that was done some years ago by researchers at Harvard, Carnegie, and Stanford. And they showed at the time that only 15% of job success was related to the hard skills. 85% of job success comes from having well-developed soft skills and interpersonal skills. Now, whether the 85-15 split is relevant right now, it's still a large number or a high percentage of success comes with having good soft skills. Geoscientists are often hardwired to the practical aspects of jobs and are generally very good at the technical skills. So developing some of these soft skills is something that we need to work on getting. Also, these soft skills are very seldom taught at university in your undergraduate years. So you're going to need to go outside of your formal education in order to develop these skills. A time element involved in this. Now, by and large, the longer you do something, the better you should be at it. So you would start by understanding, having an initial understanding of the concepts. And over time, you would develop a complete and even a sophisticated understanding of these things. Simply because somebody has been doing something for 20 years doesn't necessarily mean that they are proficient at it. And over your careers, you are going to meet individuals who have been around for many years. They might even be in senior positions, but they might not necessarily be proficient at anything that they do. Now, this time that is taken to become proficient is not going to be the same for every individual, or is it going to be the same for every skill? Because some people might become proficient at a particular skill in a short time, while others might take much longer to get to that same understanding. Or you might find it easy to become proficient at one particular skill, but another one is going to take you many years to master. Or looking at the progression of skills development in another way, how badly do you suck at your skill? And how long until you no longer suck? Moving on to the attitudes that competence brings. These are just some of the attitudes that we want to develop. What you'll notice is that these are not geoscience specific. These are attitudes that you will need in all aspects of your life. Continuing professional development. Surely once we've got our degree, we know enough to do our jobs. Why do we need to continue learning? The quotation here notes that knowledge has a half-life. Now, whether the knowledge half-life is 8 years or whatever it is, simply put, if you don't keep up with what's happening in your field, all the stuff that you learned at university is not going to be of much use to you because life moves on. Just think, for example, what skills and knowledge has changed since you left school or since you started university. Back in the day, we used to use log tables and a compass. Today, we use calculators and a GPS. Moved from mainframe computers to laptops. 20 years ago, I have to give this presentation using slides. Today, a PowerPoint presentation. So life moves on very quickly and technology improves rapidly. So if you don't keep up with what's happening in your field of practice, you will be left behind. So when we talk about CPD, continuing professional development, all we are talking about are the learning activities that you do to either develop new skills or to enhance skills that you already have. Everything that you do after you have obtained your initial degree. And this is courses, workshops, opportunities for formal and informal learning. Anything that you do to either expand your knowledge or to add new skills. And CPD simply refers to how you track and document what you've done. It's a logbook. But whether you keep a physical logbook, a digital one on your computer, or if you log it through one of the professional bodies' online portals, that is to do. And if we look at some of the key features of a CPD program, it's driven by you. You decide what it is that you want to learn. Your employer is not there to tell you, you have to do this course and you have to do that course and you have to do the other. The GSSA doesn't do it, SACNES doesn't do it. You decide what you want to do to improve your abilities. And it's an ongoing program. You will continue your professional development throughout your careers. Whether it be formal or informal learning, that's irrelevant, but it's what you want to do to develop yourself over the years. And it's not something that just happens by chance. You plan what you want to do. You effectively look at your life, look at your skills, and decide what you want to do, what courses you want to do to fill the gaps. And something I would encourage everybody to do is to view CPD as personal development. Don't just think of it in terms of, I've got to do this to collect CPD credits. You do it so that you can develop as a person. Most professional organizations have an online portal where you can log your CPD credits. SACNAST has one, the GSSA has one. But what we have done is to sign an MOU between SACNAST and GSSA so that you don't have to do it in two places. If you are a GSSA member and you're registered with SACNAST, you can decide whether to do your CPD through SACNAST or through the GSSA. You don't have to do both. Whichever one you do will be accredited in the other organization. If you do your CPD through SACNAST, it's pretty much a 5-year CPD cycle in which you need to get 25 credits over 5 years. And the current cycle runs from April 22 to March 27. There are 3 categories in which you can claim credits. You must at least get 1 category per year in the formal learning category. This is when you go on courses and things like that. So you need 1 credit from there, and then you need to get the other credits from at least 1 or 2 of these. If you do it through the GSSA, we have 4 categories. No category is obligatory. We would encourage people to collect points in all 4 categories, but you do what you are able to do. And here are a few examples of the kinds of things that you can do within the GSSA system that will allow you to collect credits. We have a much more detailed CPD course in March every year. So if you want to learn more about the things that you can collect credits on and how to go about logging these credits, join us in March. It is also a free webinar. So watch the GSSA website for details. Any questions on CPD at this stage?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Faith.
Earlier you mentioned that upgrading from candidate to professional requires some sort of CPD. And I see here that you said the 5-year CPD cycle is until 2027. So does that mean someone who's eligible to upgrade now would have to wait for the 5-year cycle to end in order to upgrade? How would that work?
No, you can upgrade immediately. And once you upgrade, your 5-year cycle begins.
Oh, okay. Thanks. That makes sense.
Moving on then to ethics and professional conduct. We'll come back to ethics a little bit later, but we'll spend a little bit of time looking at some conduct that might be considered professional or non-professional, if the case may be. Here is a list of just some of the behaviors that will impact on whether we're perceived as being professional or not. It's important to note here that all of these are just as applicable if you are working in the academic environment or in industry. It doesn't matter whether you continue your career in academia, whether you work on a mine, or whether you work in consulting. These professional behaviors will be expected of you. In fact, they're even applicable if you move out of the direct technical geoscience field. We'll look at just a few of these in a little more detail. Some of the ones that I want to highlight is how we cope with undue influence. You can be sure that if you are involved with mining, at some or other stage, you're going to come face to face with interference from some political powerful lobby group. Some instances, this is going to be political, but more often it is going to be direct or indirect pressure which is exerted on you by various stakeholders. Sometimes it could be your boss or corporate shareholders wanting to maximize profits. Other times it would be local communities, suppliers, subcontractors, each one with their own agendas. Also, what happens when the company or the client asks you to write a favorable report for a significant sum of money, even if you know the project is rubbish? Keeping in mind that if you don't do as they request, you might not get paid, or at the very least, you won't be asked to do another job for this client again. And possibly one of the most difficult situations to deal with is when you might have to make a choice between doing a job that you're not quite capable of doing and not doing the job at all. This is particularly difficult if you are unemployed at the time. Insider trading. Working as a geologist, you are going to be privy to confidential company information at some stage in your career. For example, you might know that your company is just about to open a new mine, which is going to cause the stock price to rise. Or you know that they're going to be taken over by a foreign company and your stock is going to be worthless. Now, what insider trading regulations do is they prevent you from acting on that knowledge by buying or selling shares. Now, just to note, these insider trading regulations do not prevent you from holding shares in the company that you work for. Some companies will specify the number of shares that you can hold without declaring how much you hold. But typically, the normal investor will hold shares as just part of a greater portfolio or one that is managed by an investment company. Where the regulations come in is that they prevent you from buying or selling your shares on the basis of information that is not in the public domain, on information that you have obtained because of your job and that the general public would not have access to. It's also important to remember that these regulations don't only apply to you, but it would also prevent you from passing this information on to your elderly parents or to your brother who has recently lost his job and has a family to care for. Research integrity is not just an academic concept. Over your career, you're going to do a lot of research. You'll work with junior colleagues, senior colleagues, peers on various reports, whether it be for your employer or for clients. Research integrity is where we make sure that we present accurate results, not just the results that we know that they want us to write. And if you ever get involved in reviewing an academic thesis or other journal papers, you would want to be fair and honest in your review, even if you don't necessarily agree with their conclusions. And by that, I mean agree with them on a personal basis, not on a factual basis. It also reflects how we interact with people that we're working with and how we deal with real or perceived conflicts of interest. We all know that plagiarism is seen one of the most unforgivable academic sins. Well, plagiarism in the work environment is no more acceptable, and all the same rules will exist. Just to note that plagiarism is not a legal issue, it is purely an ethical issue. And this contrasts with copyright infringement issues, which is both a legal issue as well as an ethical issue. Now, copyright infringements are so easy. Just take a book and photocopy the chapter. And we justify it because the price of books is just so ridiculous. Well, we can't afford to buy the book. We're just poor students, or we're unemployed, or we've just started working and we have so many other more important expenses, so it's okay. No, it's not. Copyright infringement is against the law and can have significant financial implications. Just a note on the use of AI GPT. These are all very useful things to try. And if you haven't tried it, and I'm not sure there's a single person in the world who hasn't yet, but if you've been under a rock for the last couple of years, please do try it. Just keep in mind, however, that certain of the GPT platforms, specifically ChatGPT, has a limited knowledge of the world after 2021. Its training set was pre-2021. So anything that you ask it is going to be based on what happened pre-2021. So the answers might be discriminatory, they could be biased, Eurocentric, misogynistic, racist, stereotypical, and so forth. It's less of an issue with the GPT platforms that access the internet live, but be aware of it. Other issues that we find with GPT is that they are prone to hallucinations. Not everything that they come up with is technically correct. And this is more of an issue in areas where you have limited training data. So in things where there is scientific advances over the last number of years, more of a problem there than in the law where there are a million books for it to be able to access. Also note that the references they provide don't always exist. Other issues that we have with GPT look at plagiarism, ethical issues, because as your GPT bot trawls through the internet or even their own database, they would pick up a sentence here and a paragraph there and put it all together, and they don't always give attribution. And sometimes they don't give correct attribution. So while it is a very useful tool, just be aware of its limitations. Harassment, bullying, and discrimination is never acceptable. And we see harassment being applied or expressed in a number of different ways. Verbal, whether it be in person or cyberbullying, written communication, physical behaviors, creation of images or recordings, discrimination, the prejudicial treatment of different categories of people based on certain features. Just to note that the GSSA has a formal position statement on these issues, which is reference to the Code of Ethics. And the membership and transformation portfolios address these specific issues. Two issues that I want to specifically highlight. One is that of sexual harassment. You are geoscientists, and you either will be or are currently working in a male-dominated environment. So, gentlemen, how you treat your female colleagues, peers, juniors, and superiors, especially in the company of other men, says a lot about you as professionals. And ladies, how you treat your male counterpart is no less important. Treat everyone with respect and dignity. Another aspect I want to to touch on is how you as professional geoscientists treat those in the industry who cannot advance your career. Here I'm referring to junior colleagues, to non-scientists, to students, guests, exhibitors, and vendors at a conference, contractors, admin staff, cleaners. These people all deserve the same courtesy and respect that you would give to your employers or your clients. Bottom line, treat everyone the way that you would like to be treated. One last question. Is it always discrimination if you don't get the job you applied for, or you don't get the promotion that you think you deserve? I know this is a horrible thought, but do consider the possibility that it just might be that you are not the best person for that particular job. Moving on then to mentoring. This is a very special way of contributing to the continuity of education to the next generation. And it is something that we encourage all professionals to volunteer for. There are many organizations that have formal structures for mentoring. And here I'm specifically to the GSSA, the SAIMM, SACNAS, EXA, WIMSA, Bridge the Gap at the universities. We also have many of the larger companies. They have formal mentoring programs as well. But probably the most amount of mentoring, coaching, training, tutoring, call it what you want, takes place in informal settings. Now, in any program, we always have far more mentee applications than we have mentors. So I want to refer to this mantra here that was first coined in the surgery field. See one, do one, teach one. So firstly, make yourself available for mentorship as a mentee. Then take the time to build your career, but don't forget to come back and volunteer as a mentor to help with the next generation. So this is a request to pretty much all of you online. Make yourself available, either as a mentee or as a mentor. And you don't need to have 20 years in the experience in the industry to act as a mentor. Somebody who has just been through a mentorship program, somebody who has just left university can assist as a mentor to more junior people. So please, this is the email address. Send a note to the GSSA. Either have mentorship in the subject line or mark for the attention of Nolene and join our mentorship program. Like networking, this is the process where we make connections and build relationships. And unfortunately, this is one of the skills that we've lost a lot since lockdown. These are some of the benefits that you can attain by networking. And yes, a certain amount of networking can be done through social media, LinkedIn and various other platforms. But if you really want to develop relationships that are going to last throughout a career, you do need to get involved in physical networking. Yes, it is an effort. You have to drag yourself out of your comfortable home, get in your car, drive through traffic to somewhere else. But it is worth the effort. And the GSSA has a number of specialized networking events throughout the year. Please look out for them. Similar to online dating. You can meet online all you like, but you physically have to meet in real life before it can progress anywhere. But something else that we don't often think about with respect to professional behaviors is how we dress and how we manage our time. So 2 questions that you need to ask yourself when you get dressed in the morning. Does what you wear say anything about your competence, about how well you do your job? By a show of hands, who says yes? Okay, right, thank you. The next question is, does the way you dress say anything about about your professionalism? Can I have a show of hands for that, please? Who says yes? Okay, right, thank you. So the short answer is, what you wear has nothing to do with how good you are at doing your job. But what you wear says a huge amount about how professional you are. There is nothing to say that a professional always wears a suit to work or a skirt and heels. It is about wearing what is appropriate for the job at hand. So if you are out in the field mapping, a dress suit is not going to be appropriate, but neither is wearing shorts or casual clothes if you've been invited to and accept an award at a prestigious gala dinner event. What we wear is also important when doing in-person presentations or going for a job interview. You must be the star of the show, not what you're wearing. You don't want to be wearing anything more casual than your audience. Remember, you're in the mining industry, and typically you're going to spend quite a bit of time asking people for money. So conservative is generally more appropriate. Investors, bankers, lawyers, senior mine management really don't care about your individual style. They want to hear from the professional you. If you want to express your individuality through fashion in private, that's fine. But if your presentation is in front of a fashionable, hip audience, that's fine. The mining industry is generally not a hip, fashionable audience. So it's best to stick to a more formal, professional code dress. Now, we spend a lot of time in video conferences. Even with contact events coming back into fashion, you will spend a lot of time in virtual events or in having online meetings with colleagues and clients all over the world. So please, when you name yourself, put your name and your surname. If you're having an internal meeting with colleagues, using only one name is fine. But in a multicultural situation, also try and distinguish between your name and your surname. Because in some cultures, the given name is first and the surname is second. In other cultures, it's more common to have the surname first and the given name second. Either is fine, but try and make it easier for people who are not within your culture to be able to see the difference. Also, please keep your mics muted when you join a meeting or during a presentation. If it's a discussion session, keeping them live the whole time is fine. Also, observe local etiquette regarding the use of video. And what I mean by that is, in some parts of the world, particularly in Africa, bandwidth is limited, data is scarce. So people like to keep videos off because it saves, makes easier for people to connect. But if you're having a small meeting, with international colleagues and everybody has their video on, don't be that person who puts your video off and there's just this disembodied voice that appears from time to time. How we manage our time also says a lot about how we are perceived. These are some of the issues to pay attention to. Are you on time? Or are you always that person who is late for everything? Who, no matter what time the meeting is, always comes in 5 or 10 minutes late? Or do you have a habit of always logging into a virtual meeting late? Sure, there are reasons sometimes. I'm talking here about a habit of being late. Do you complete your tasks on time? Or does your supervisor always have to go running around after you to get things handed in? Do you pay attention? Are you present? Or do you spend all your time texting on your phone or doing something else while the meeting is in progress? This can be a real challenge, particularly during virtual meetings. It's just so easy to do something with somebody waddling off in the background. We also want to be productive. And this is not just about getting a certain amount of work done. It's also about working smarter, not just harder. And then finally, how do we manage our time, our productivity and efficiency while working remotely? Now, whether this means that you're working from home or when you're in the field, not in the corporate office, how productive are you when nobody else is around? In our lives, there are things which are important and there are things that are urgent. And the things that are important are not always urgent, and urgent things are seldom important. We can divide pretty much everything in our life into one of these 4 quadrants. Things which are both urgent and important. Things which are not urgent but are important. Things which are urgent but not important. And things which are neither urgent nor important. So we need to analyze our own life and work and prioritize accordingly. It's the only way to get everything done that we want to do. And if you still don't have time for the things that need to be done, well, take stuff out of this box and just chuck it. I'm sure that many of you would have seen this experiment where you take a jar and you fill it with sand, rocks, pebbles, and water. And depending upon how you put these things into the jar, you either have space left over or you don't have enough space. So how do you fill your jar? Well, to get the best out of a limited amount of time, we need to get our priorities right. So first you want to schedule the important tasks. These are represented by the rocks. These are the big things, such as our goals, our objectives. It would include our direct families and our jobs. This would equate maybe to our goal of becoming a senior consultant or getting qualified as a competent person. Then you put in the pebbles. These are the important and urgent tasks, like finishing the assignment that's sitting on your desk, getting your technical report submitted by the due date. Sometimes this can also include taking care of our emotional or spiritual well-being, including certain extended family obligations. Then you add the sand. This is the myriad of things that we have in our lives that distract us from accomplishing the big things. These could include leisure activities and other non-important, non-urgent time wasters, like checking our social media, hanging out with our friends. Yes, all the things that we'd much rather be doing than work. There is place for all of these things, but they are not the big things. They're not the rocks. Those need to be put in our lives first. And just to note that if you took this one, which is a well-sorted jar, and you poured water in, there would still be place. There's always time for beer, but after you put the rocks in first. So in summary, the pillars of professionalism that we've looked at: registration, continuing professional development, and then ethics and professional conduct. If anybody has any questions, please ask them now. Mike, go ahead.
Hello, Tanya, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Good. First of all, please advise if this is not the correct forum to discuss it, then we can take it to another, or we can take it offline. But I had previously contacted SACNASP for additional registration in environmental sciences. And there were a lot of, it took a lot of patience to get SACNASP to acknowledge documents, acknowledge payments, etc., etc. I don't know if the GSSA is aware of that, and if they've maybe taken it up with SACNASP to maybe improve their the efficiency of looking at applications and doing the processing, etc.
Mike, yes, we are very aware of that. It is a major problem. One of the reasons being, particularly within the environmental field, there are a huge number of applications, and SACNASP is pretty much swamped. They don't have the capacity to deal with them all timeously. And at the moment, they're getting further behind each month. We have discussed it with them. We have even had some of our members assist with the administration of it, but it's not going to improve anytime soon. So just take a breath and pour a glass of wine.
Okay, all right. Now, fortunately, my application went through, but it took me like 9 months, probably something like that. And I know there's a lot of frustration out there. I've seen on LinkedIn some of the colleagues airing their frustration. But as long as the GSSA is aware of that, then that's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, we are aware of it, and unfortunately, there's not a huge amount we can do about that. So we're now going to take a 15-minute break. Right, welcome back, everybody. The next section, we will spend a bit of time looking at ethics. Now, I'm sure many of you will have seen this, or at least heard of this ethical dilemma. You have a trolley bus coming along a road, a rail rather, and down along the line, you have 5 people on the railway line. Don't worry about why they were there and how they got there. It's not relevant to the discussion, but there are 5 people on the railway line who will get killed if the trolley bus continues on. There is a siding, and there is 1 person down along that rail who will be killed if the train goes that way. You are standing here with the lever. You can either allow the trolley bus to continue on, or you can move it off down the siding. There's no brakes on the trolley bus. You can't stop it. You can't do anything about it. There is no driver there. The trolley bus will either go down there and kill these people, or you can make it go down here and kill that 1 person. And the question is, what are you going to do? Now, I don't expect you to answer these questions, but I would like you to think in your own mind as to how you would react to this situation. Would you just stand there and allow the trolley bus to continue on? Or would you pull the lever and send it off down the siding? Would it make any difference if this one person here was a child or an old person? Would it make any difference if you knew this person and these people were strangers to you? Would it make any difference if these are members of the public, civilians who happen to be there, and this person is a worker who works for the company? Would it make any difference if these individuals there were working for the company and were there legally, and this person is a trespasser in the area illegally? Would it make a difference if the people involved belong to a different race or gender or nationality? Is there a difference between allowing somebody to die by standing there and doing nothing, or by making a positive choice to kill somebody by moving the lever? Taking this dilemma a step further, these are the 5 people on the line. This is a bridge. And there is the large man on the bridge. Would you push the fat man off the bridge and derail the train? Is there a difference between pushing the fat man and flipping the switch, as we saw in the previous slide? Or would you even jump onto the tracks yourself and derail the train? Now, there's no right answer to any of those questions. This dilemma has been around for almost 100 years, and no one's ever provided a correct answer to it. But what example this exercise was here for is to see how you reasoned your answers, and that is a result of your ethics. Now, just by way of a bit of background, in the hierarchy of ethics, we have meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. And meta-ethics is a branch of metaphysical philosophy that looks at what does it mean to call something good or bad? Who makes that decision as to what is right and what is wrong? Normative ethics, this deals with ideas about what is good and bad and how people make decisions. And that influences how you made your decisions regarding the ethical dilemma that we had a look at. Now, just for interest, here are some of the more common theories of how people make decisions. One group would look at the consequences which a decision might have. So you might make a decision based upon what's in your best interest, what is good for you. Or you might make the decision based on what would be the greatest good for all stakeholders. In the previous example, somebody who made their decision that way would say, let's move the train and kill one person to save 5. And of course, questions regarding that as well, when you make these decisions, who decide what are the best interests? Who decides what is moral? We have another variety of people who would select the most moral choice. Who decides what's moral? These theories here would emphasize the character, the virtue of moral philosophy rather than good or evil. Other people would look to an outside source to make a decision for them, whether that outside guidance is religious, social, or celebrity focused, or even a political ideology. Or do you make a decision as to what you yourself think is right or wrong? Okay, so where this is going is that irrespective of how we make decisions, to define what is right or wrong is a completely different thing, because this requires that we look at the situation and make a value judgment. Value judgments are subjective, and these depend on things such as our background, our culture, our religious convictions, historical experiences, and so forth. In making value judgments, we need to look at concepts such as fairness and justice. And because we all have different life experiences and different backgrounds, it's going to impact our view on what we think is fair and just. And if we rely on ethical theories, well, that's no use because they often conflict with each other. So, if we're in the workplace or in an organization and everybody has their own set of values and their own way of making decisions, well, you can see that that just has the potential for conflict and total chaos. And so in most situations, this is where either society as a whole or your employer or your organization creates a set of accepted norms for that particular group. And this is where we enter the world of applied ethics. These are found everywhere. Looking at a set of research ethics, business ethics. These are created by a particular group for a particular group, and they are followed by that group. We also have geoethics and professional ethics. Just a word on geoethics. This is at the broader scale, where we have a universal statement of geoethics, which deals with the ethical, social, and cultural implications of what we do, whether it be education, research, so forth. And it also looks at the societal role and responsibilities of geoscientists. It's based on pure ethics principles. It's not enforceable anywhere. But when you look through it, you'll see they are broad guiding principles as to how we should practice our science. But at a more day-to-day scale, the ethics that we generally deal with are what we know as professional ethics. And this is the formal structured world of the registered geoscientist. Professional ethics statements are based on principles of applied ethics or geoethics. They are obligatory for members. So if you are a member of an organization or an employee of a certain company, their ethics statements will be obligatory for you to comply with. And they're typically backed by a robust complaints and disciplinary process. Now, if we go back to our ethical dilemma in the beginning, most of us are never going to be called on to pull a lever and allow a train to go or not go. But these are the things that we are going to deal with in our careers. And believe me when I tell you that you will encounter at least one or two of these over the years. So in the world of professional ethics, we meet a hierarchy of codes. And the code of ethics is, within the code of ethics, you're going to have a statement that is a general principle. And that general principle will guide your behavior. So when you're faced with a dilemma, you will use this statement to help make a decision. Then there are statements which refer to detailed applications. So you might have an ethics statement, for example, that says that employees must obey the law. The statements in the code of conduct side of it might list specific laws that the employee needs to obey. And then the third feature is a code of practice. Now, a code of practice typically refers to a specific practice or competency that you would need to follow. And these are often supported by industry standards, guidance notes, best practice recommendations. And the examples that I can give you on this are those which are related to resource estimation, mine health and safety, risk management, employment equities. Those are all specific codes of practice. Now, in any organization, there might be one code of ethics with various statements relating to these specific conducts, but there might be a whole host of code of practices that you're also expected to go along with. And just the one that I'm going to highlight is the SAM codes, which is probably the code of practice most applicable to geoscience professionals. And I'm highlighting this because this is going to be fundamental in guiding what you do. There is a recording of the SAM codes, an introduction to the SAM codes on YouTube. It is free to watch. Please go and look at it. There will also be a live course next year, so keep an eye out on our website. So, we mentioned that every company or organization will have a code of ethics or code of conduct or whatever it is that they want to call it. But what happens if we transgress these accepted norms, either by accident or by choice? Well, generally there is a complaints process that is in place to deal with these. And typically, subjecting yourself to the complaints procedure is a condition of membership to that organization or a condition of employment. Remember that the public and also members of your organization or company can lodge complaints. And with the GSSA, anybody out there can lay a complaint against you. These are mostly handled internally, but there are certain circumstances when the cases are passed on to SACNASP or even to the judicial system. And that has only happened once. The purpose of a complaint, it's not a stick to beat anybody with. It is there to improve behaviors, and especially where the breaches are without intent. But one thing I want to highlight, that the complaints process is not a forum to settle private scores. Or if you have a difference of opinion, a difference of personal opinion, whether it be professional or academic, the complaints process is not the place to do that. Go buy a pair of boxing gloves and deal with it behind the tennis court like kids do. Even if you do have cause for a formal complaint, it's not necessary always to go to the complaints process. There are many informal ways that you can deal with the situation. And this is, I tell my family, act like a grown-up. You don't always have to behave like a child in these circumstances. Right, so we're now going to take a moment to look through the GSSA Code of Ethics and see what it is that we're letting ourselves in for. Ethical leadership is in dire need, irrespective of the role that you play, whether it be in the workplace or whether you be at home. Behaving ethically is about so much more than just following a set of rules. It's about complying with ethical principles in all aspects of your life, whether it be professional or personal. You are going to encounter situations where there are no hard and fast rules, or the rules might not be clear, and you have to make your own decisions. The GSSA Code of Ethics is benchmarked against international geoscience organizations. And it applies to you whether you are an academic or an applied geoscientist. Simply by being a member of the GSSA, you are obligated to comply with the Code of Ethics, and also to submit yourself to the complaints and disciplinary process. Download a copy of the Code of Ethics from the website. File it somewhere where you can find it, because you are going to meet situations where you will need to refer to them. So looking at the preamble to the code, the breach of the codes is in two varieties. There are those without intent. And the results of these is basically personal counseling or admonition. But then you get the more serious breaches with intent, also unethical behaviors. And this could give rise to more significant such as suspension, expulsion, and or publication. Right, so clause 1 in the code tells us that in conducting your professional activities, the responsibility of members for the welfare, health, and safety of the community shall at all times come before your responsibility to the profession, to sectional or private interests, your clients or employers, or to other members. So what that means is you would avoid assignments that could create a conflict of interests between your clients or employees and the public interest. You would work with acceptable technological standards and not in a way as to jeopardize public welfare, health, or safety. Endeavor to maintain technological services essential to public welfare. Endeavor to promote the well-being of the community. And if your judgment is overruled, inform your client or employer of the possible consequences of not doing so, and if appropriate, notify the proper authority of the situation. Constructively advance the well-being of the community. This one here is actually quite a meaningful thought, because it does mean if you know that you are doing something that's going to be to the detriment of the local community, you need to inform somebody, take responsibility for that information. Clause 2, at all times act so as to uphold and enhance the honesty, honor, integrity, and dignity of the profession. So you would not be involved with in a business or a professional practice with someone who is known to be of a fraudulent and dishonest nature. You wouldn't use associations to conceal unethical acts and relationships. You wouldn't knowingly continue in a partnership with anyone who has been removed from the GSSA because of unprofessional conduct. Tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. And if you're called upon to give professional advice, provide an opinion that is objective and reliable. And if you're giving an advice and you are aware, become aware that it will not be followed, take all reasonable steps to ensure that the person's neglecting your advice is aware of any danger and other serious consequences which may result. It is incumbent upon professionals to give their best opinion. And if they know or think that somebody is not going to follow their advice, make them aware of the potential consequences. Put it in writing so that they are completely aware of what may result from ignoring what you are saying. Members shall not take on the functions of an expert in fields other than their own, or accept professional obligations that they are not competent to discharge. So you would inform your employer or client and make appropriate recommendations on obtaining further advice if an assignment requires qualifications and experience outside of your field of competence. So if you're not able to do the job or the full job, it's your obligation to disclose that to your client or your employer and make recommendations as to how it can best be done. If you're providing professional services, you would not describe yourself or permit yourself to be described, nor act as a consultant or contractor unless they are members or fellows of the society, registered with SACNASP, occupy a position of professional independence, and prepared to design and supervise works or acts as an unbiased or independent advisor, and then conduct your practice in strict compliance with the conditions approved by the Council of the Society. We spoke about registration as professionals earlier, and this is where this comes in the Code of Ethics. You would also not give a professional opinion, be it a report, legal testimony, or whatever, without being thoroughly informed as to what might reasonably be expected. Clause 4. Members shall build their professional reputation on merit and shall not compete unfairly. So you would only approach prospective clients or employers with due regard to professional integrity and the Code of Ethics. Promote the principle of engagement on the basis of merit. Uphold the principle of adequate and appropriate remuneration for professional staff, and give due consideration to terms of employment which have the approval of an appropriate association. You would not attempt to supplant somebody else who has been either employed or consulting who has already been appointed. If you're doing consulting work, you wouldn't undertake professional work on a basis that involves an undisclosed speculative fee conditional on implementation of the work, unless you disclose that up front. You would not falsify or misrepresent your own or associates' qualifications, experience, and responsibilities, or will not maliciously or carelessly do anything to injure the reputation, prospects, or businesses of others, so that be done directly or indirectly. You wouldn't use the advantages of a privileged position to compete unfairly with others. When you explain your work, exercise due restraint and refrain from unfair, unjustified criticism of others. Give proper credit for work done by others and acknowledge the contribution of subordinates particularly. Refrain from plagiarism and don't submit the same professional paper for publication in more than one peer-reviewed journal. And use circumspect advertising. Members shall use their skill and knowledge in the interests of their employer or client for whom they shall act in professional matters as faithful agents or trustees. So you would at all times try to avoid known and potential conflicts of interest. Keep your employer, keep your client informed on all of these matters. Be impartial when acting as an administrator of a contract. Do not accept compensation, financial or otherwise, from more than one party for services on the same project, unless the circumstances are disclosed. And neither solicit nor accept financial or other valuable considerations, in other words, bribes. Again, soliciting or accepting gratuities, etc. Advise your client or employer when you believe that a project is not going to be viable. Don't keep on doing work and adding additional work when you know that this project is going to go nowhere fast. The disclosure or use of confidential information, or destroy calculations or documentary or other evidence required for the verification of your work. Members shall give evidence, express opinions, or make statements in an objective and truthful manner and on the basis of adequate knowledge. Any professional report, statement, or testimony that you give must be objective and accurate, and must be based on adequate knowledge and technical competence. But that doesn't preclude considered speculation based on experience and wide knowledge. And if you do have any interest that might be seen as affecting your judgment in a technical manner, make sure everybody knows about it. Clause 7, members shall continue in their professional development throughout their careers and shall actively assist and encourage those under their direction to advance their knowledge and experience. This goes back to the whole issue of CPD. Not only will you maintain personal competence, but you'll also encourage your professional employees and subordinates to do the same thing, and assist the society and other professional organizations to do the same. Clause 8 tells us that where members are involved in preparing public reports or portions thereof for mining and exploration companies, the member must comply with all laws and government regulations relating to the mineral industries, and within the rules, regulations, and practices as established and promulgated by the stock exchanges with respect to the official listing requirements for mining and or other companies within the country in which one is working. So it is therefore incumbent upon members to make sure that they know the laws and regulations relating to the minerals industry, not only in South Africa, but where else you might be working. And observe the requirements of the stock exchanges. In particular, here we refer to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and the requirements of a competent person. So the Code of Ethics here reinforces the importance of the SAM codes and the JSE listing rules. Then finally, the members shall comply with all relevant laws and regulations of any country in which they work, including laws, regulations, policies, and practices regarding intellectual property. So we need to inform ourselves of the relevant laws within South Africa and in other countries relating to mineral regulation, intellectual property, commercial, consulting, and academic intellectual property. Does anybody have any queries or comments on these clauses that we've discussed? I know there are also a number of people on this call who have been operating as consultants and industry geologists for a number of years. If you'd like maybe to share some examples of some of the issues that you've had to deal with over the years.
Hi, Tanya. Sure, yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, one of the things one encounters as a consultant is clients or previous clients coming to you with statements such as, can you please write a report stating XYZ, when XYZ is clearly aimed at generating interest in boosting stock prices and whatnot. And it's a very dangerous and slippery slope to be doing something like that, because one cannot obviously go into it with a predetermined outcome from one's own side to write something like that. One has to objectively look at the data and quite clearly state your own interpretation of what's going on. So that's one of the main things I come across in that regard that can be very off-putting to a client when you don't want to do exactly what it is that they're asking, when it's not always clear-cut sort of answer, let's say.
Thanks, Q. And that is as you say, more common than you would like to believe.
Not a problem.
Thanks. Okay, let's go on then. I have a couple of case studies that I would like to put forward to you for your consideration. So you have a situation where you have a couple of team members who plan a dinner at an expensive restaurant. The team leader says, I'll expense it. No one will ever know because we still have money in the budget. You know that expensing a dinner like this is probably not allowed. So what would you do? Remember, it's each one's decision to do what they want to do. But under a circumstance like this, it generally becomes known to management somehow along the line. The principle there would be, pay for your own dinner. Unless it is something which is organized and above board. You're hiring for a new position. You got two candidates. First candidate is older with children and the other is a recent graduate. Both are qualified for the position. You believe that the candidate who is older with the responsibility of children is more likely to be committed to the company long term and is probably the right choice. Is this reason okay? Anybody? You cannot hire anybody based on specific characteristics such as age, gender, or ethnicity. You have to make those decisions based on qualifications and on merit. Your work requires frequent travel, and you often find yourself reviewing information about customers and projects sitting at the airport or riding the train. So something that we deal with daily. What are the things you need to keep in mind? Confidentiality of business information. And if you happen to be on the phone discussing it with somebody in the office, make sure that you can do so in a confidential manner. When you work in a department, you receive a request for a list of company contacts from the event coordinator. Is it okay to provide the list because it is business information contact only? Here in South Africa, the POPI Act is in all aspects of our life. And so providing contact information is not something that people should do. And just as an addendum to this, at the GSSA, we often get people asking us for lists of contacts of people who have been at a specific event. Perhaps they want to contact them for business reasons or whatever. We're not in a position to provide contact details to third parties. Whether they were or weren't at the event is completely irrelevant. Racially offensive comments from co-workers on social media. There are very many ways of dealing with this. And the situation, as unpleasant as it is something that really crops up from time to time. So consider how you might deal with it. This is something we also often deal with when working cross-border. You're dealing with somebody in another country and you need approval from a government inspector before you can move forward. Customer or your client suggests that you need to offer the inspector a gift because you don't want to hold up the project. It's a very simple one. This is a bribe. Do not do it. One of your clients' service providers invite you out on a weekend hunting trip. Do you accept? There are certainly a bunch of questions that you should ask yourself. What is the value of it? Does it create the appearance of bias or violating company policy? Accepting this influence any decision to give them business in the future. If in doubt, go without. You're the lead supervisor on a new engineering or mining project, and your brother-in-law, who is sufficiently qualified, is looking for a job. Should you hire him? Why your family member might be perfectly qualified for the position. You need to disclose that relationship, and somebody else needs to make the decision as to whether that individual should be hired. But there is nothing wrong with hiring families as long as it is done in a way that does not create the appearance of a conflict of interest. If you note that people have signed off for work that has not been done, again, speak to somebody first about it. You've been working on a project and you note that the customer has made some errors that inflated their costs. Company may not have known this, the client didn't do it purposely, and since it means more income for your company, what should you do? Your client will appreciate your honesty, and they are likely to come back to you a second time. So you've been working long and hard on an exciting bid. And then he goes and tells his friend. Is that acceptable? And what should you do? Remember talking about non-public information that could make a difference in terms of the company. It's definitely in violation of company ethics, but it might also violate the insider trading laws. So something like this, again, needs to be run up the chain. You're attending a conference somewhere, you see a friend who used to work in your company and now works for a competitor. You guys go out to dinner and catch up on all sorts of things. What do you need to keep in mind? And be careful not to talk about company customers, strategies, contacts, projects. And just as you don't talk about it, don't ask about the same things from your colleague. If you know that certain licenses and approvals need to be done when sending documentation or when sending geophysical equipment or anything out of the country, the question is, what do you do if you don't know what documentation needs to be done? And the answer there is, don't guess. Also, don't assume that it's somebody else's responsibility. If you have a question regarding something that's happening, ask somebody about it. And in conclusion, just a few quotations to impress upon you the absolute importance of ethical behavior. This one by Warren Buffett. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So please do think about that. Right, now before you disappear entirely, I'm going to pop a Word document into the chat box. There are 4 ethical dilemmas in this document. Please answer them all. Answer them on the worksheet. Send them to me at tanyarmarshall@gmail.com on or before the 4th of October. And that is to receive 3 GSSA CPD credits if you complete and pass the assignment. I'm now going to stop sharing, and I'll take any questions if anybody has any related to any part of the presentation. Pamela, yes, go ahead.
Hi,
Okay.
Tanya.
Hi.
Sorry about that. I wanted to find out if the slides or the PowerPoint will be shared with us.
Yes. The recording will go up on YouTube a couple of days, as long as it takes to get edited. But the slides, I will send a PDF of that around. Kate, we can do that as soon as I get it to you. You can send it off to everybody.
Not a problem, as long as I've got their names and email addresses.
Okay, well, it looks like everybody is up to speed with everything. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Shelley, yes, go ahead, and you've got my email address. Please send it to me directly. Thanks, everyone.